Hi everyone, thanks for coming. Our presentation is called Rest and Peace. First of all, when we were preparing to the presentation, we got excited about the topic because it's so interesting and large scale that it deserves a separate conference. We have a lot to say about protocols, APIs, but today we will primarily focus on REST. My name is Konstantin. I'm a Drupal consultant from St. Petersburg, Russia. I'm a co-founder of local Drupal community and a Drupal trainer.
Hello guys, I'm Kate from Moscow. I'm a Drupal developer with 4 years experience, and today I will be talking a lot, but right now I will let Konstantin start.
Thanks, Kate. Some time ago, if I needed to create an API in Drupal, I would probably use the services module because it was the only one well-known solution at that time. Today is not so easy and quick to choose between available options in the Drupal world. So Kate and I decided to compare them, the solutions, and share our results. So let's have some rest. In Drupal world, you've probably heard a lot of marketing terms related to APIs, such as headless, decoupled, and API first. They all basically have the same meaning. You put Drupal core on the backend, then you enable API on top of it, and then create a separate front-end application that consumes that API. So that the standard representation layer, theming layer of Drupal is not used anymore. REST has become a marketing term to, sometimes people use it to call any kind of HTTP-based API. So let's keep it in mind. There are many areas where APIs are useful. I'll provide a few examples. First of all, mobile apps. Mobile apps use API for processing their data, for storing data, for almost everything. The next example is microservices. Imagine that each part of your system is a separate service, and the only chance to use it is through API. These are microservices. Another example is front-end apps. It's trendy now to split back-end and front-end parts of the application and make them absolutely decoupled. At the end of our presentation, we'll show you an example of Angular application that consumes Drupal 8 RESTful web services. What is REST exactly? The term REST was coined by Roy Fielding in his PhD dissertation. A representational state transfer is an architectural style for implementing web systems. In fact, it's just a set of standards that defines how a well-developed, well-designed application should function. REST itself is not a standard, but it prescribes use of HTTP and URI and other standards. So let's take a look at components of REST. In REST, they have resources with their URIs. The resources have their representations in formats of HTML, XML, JSON, or some others. A client sends a request to the server using one of the HTTP method, and the server responds with the representation of the resource. The methods are illustrated in the table with examples of resources. So if you perform GET request on items, you will receive a collection of items, all items. If you post items, you will create one more item. If you get item/identifier, you will receive a particular resource, particular item. And if you put, you will update item. If you delete, you will remove item from the collection. The important thing is that all messages between the client and the server are self-descriptive. It means that they contain enough information to be processed. This information can be transferred through API, query parameters, request headers, and request body. Sometimes designers of REST API don't follow all REST principles precisely. That can happen because of a natural tendency to simplify things, to make them easier to use. So let's think of it as an evolution rather than raising void holy wars about this. So now let's move to the most interesting part of our presentation, the comparison of existing solutions. Kate, please.
Yeah, thanks, Konstantin. Now it's time to move to more practical part. We are going to compare existing Drupal solutions and input the results into this big table. So let's start from a quick introduction of all the solutions listed in the table. The first one is services. Actually, how popular is it? Could you please raise your hand if you have ever used services module?
Quite popular.
I know.
Yeah, me too.
So yeah, popular services is very popular and mature solution for building APIs. It promotes itself as a standardized solution for building APIs in Drupal. We gave services 5 stars for popularity. Our next competitor is RESTful Web Services, also known as RestWS. This module is 1 year older than services, but much less popular. RestWS has a very clean architecture based on Entity API. Out of the box, it provides endpoints for every entities in the system. According to Drupal.org, it is used on more than 4,000 sites, so 3 stars for popularity. Next module has a pretty similar name, RESTful. RESTful is a framework for developers, which is built with modern API concepts in mind. It has some settings in the UI, but the most of stuff has to be done in code. This module is still new. It got 2 stars from us, but its popularity is growing. Now let's move to more exotic solutions. And imagine you have created your custom API callback with simple hook menu, yeah, and it works. And as your Drupal site becomes more popular, you will notice that your simple code works pretty slowly. It is because of Drupal full bootstrap process. And to avoid it, you can use JS module or its successor for APIs called Endpoint. They both allow you to run your code at lower bootstrap levels. This approach isn't very popular because you don't have access to all the goods of Drupal before it is bootstrapped. So 1 star for popularity. Finally, let's look into the future. Drupal 8 has REST module in core. The full name is RESTful Web Services, and the idea is the same as RestWS. Every entity has its endpoint. Additionally, you can install a REST UI module to configure your resources from the UI. This solution will definitely be popular as Drupal 8 will enter the market. 2 stars at the moment. And we are done with our popularity criteria. Now we are interested in how easy it is to start using these modules. So our next criteria is documentation. And if you wonder how we calculated these points, scores, stars, we have some additional data under the hood. I will skip it now, but you will be able to find it later online. In short, of course, there is no module with 100% documentation coverage, but most of them have some decent docs to start with. Now imagine we have succeeded in some initial API configuration, and we have something like this. You can recognize Drupal. In real world, you will definitely want to modify it, to rename some fields, to add more data, to remove data. So you need some hooks. Let's talk about extensibility. When we calculated these scores, we recognized some correlation between module size, code size, and its extensibility. So we decided to include the data about code size into the slides for developers in the room. And additionally, we counted how many new hooks these modules provide. And services provides 18 new hooks. It is because of services custom architecture, where you can alter pretty everything. But the most popular hook is hook services resources. It should return array, big custom array with specially named keys, which have some meaning for services. And the real work is done in your custom callback functions. RestWS uses all the goods of Entity API and has some additional hooks. One of the most popular, I guess, is hook RestWS resource info. Again, it should return an array of your resources configuration. Instead of callbacks, you should create your controller class on top of RestWS interface. By the way, you are not limited with entities. You can expose any data you want. Next, RESTful is a pretty big module, but I found only one hook they provide. It is because they use ctools plugins heavily. To create your custom resource, you need to implement ctools hook and again create controller on top of one of RESTful classes. Endpoint isn't really a module. It provides custom function which replaces Drupal full bootstrap. To start using it, you need a custom file, api.php. You should place it in the core of your site and call this function endpoint root with an array of your custom configurations. REST module in Drupal 8 uses all these plugin managers, config managers, routes, annotations, so on, of course. So to create your custom resource, you first need to create a controller based on resource base and implement, of course, resource interface. This controller should be placed in specially named folder, so REST plugin manager will discover it automatically. When you will definitely want to enable this resource, to do so, you need to place a REST settings YAML configuration file into your module, or you can enable it from REST UI module. So, as you can see, most of modules provide some API programmatic API, so you can create your custom resources, which is a good thing. Now let's talk about security and authentication. Again, we did some research. I will skip the details and do a quick review. First, CSRF token. It is not an authentication method. It's a way to protect Drupal from cross-site request forgery attacks. It is supported and enabled in most of modules, so be aware. Next, cookie authentication is built-in authentication mechanism in Drupal. So it is supported by all the modules. To use it, API client has to send cookie header on every request. There is even simpler method, HTTP basic F. You need to send username and password on every request, which is very simple but insecure. Token authentication is a replacement of cookie authentication designed especially for APIs. It has some benefits. For client, it is easier to use. For server, it can give more flexibility because token can have some additional data, expiration date, some additional logic. At the moment, only RESTful supports token authentication. If you need more complex authentication, you can use one of OAuth server implementations in Drupal. We have two. Services supports both. RESTful supports OAuth 2 server, and Drupal 8 work in progress. Of course, if you want to use OAuth in your project, please be prepared to spend a lot of time on it because it's quite a complicated task. And now I guess you all are waiting for our next criteria, and Konstantin will share with you results of our performance benchmarks. Please.
Thanks, Kate. So, let's talk a bit about performance. I've seen a bunch of presentations about Drupal performance and not only Drupal, and most of them used HTTP GET method to measure, to calculate. But you know that HTTP GET can be cached by clients. And what we decided to do is we used HTTP POST because it's, from our point of view, it's a more critical as a measure. First of all, how actually they counted our results. They had a virtual machine with 1 gig of memory, and Ubuntu, Nginx, and MariaDB as a database, and PHP 5.5. They've created a simple content type with just 2 fields, title and body. And they only send HTTP POST requests to create entities. So let's take a look at our results. Here it is. So as you can see here, RestWS, orange bar, served more than others. It served more than 80 requests per second. Gray bar is RESTful service, is RESTful module and RESTful services. It served less than 40 requests per second, and close to the RESTful module goes services module. It also served less than 40. So it's yellow, by the way. And blue bar is Drupal 8. You know, it has a great potential, but from our point of view, it's not yet ready for a real lot. It's simply lost from 3 to 7% of requests with 500 internal server error. So it means that it lost some data, some nodes not exist after. So the next chart includes one module that I didn't mention previously. It's endpoint. The problem with endpoint is that it's not so easy to replicate not safe function inside custom endpoint callback because they just had a configuration level of Bootstrap. So its tests are a bit synthetic. What we did is they calculated not safe load time using devel module and some core timers beforehand. And then they added this delay to the endpoint callback. This way they emulated not safe load. That's why it was not included in the previous slide, but actually they give it 5 stars because it's the fastest one. They give Drupal 8 1 star because it lost data. They give RestWS 4 stars because it's the fastest from major solutions. And RESTful module and services module receive 3 and 2 stars accordingly.
So pretty cool. Thanks, Konstantin. Now you may think that it's already enough information, but it's not. So your API is only as good as as its documentation. This is a very good slogan from API.io, and we totally agree with it. Your APIs should be understandable to both human and machine. In the future, in the perfect world, REST APIs are self-documented. In real Drupal world, we still need to spend some effort on writing documentation. So, in services, we have a services documentation API. This module allows you to write documentation in the UI or in code. It generates some documentation automatically, but from our experience, it's not clear enough for developers who are unfamiliar with Drupal and with services. RestWS has similar module too, thanks to Drupal 8, because REST API doc module was initially developed for Drupal 8 and then backported to Drupal 7. This module generates documentation automatically from RestWS controllers and entity API metadata. RESTful implemented automatic documentation in more RESTful way. So every API resource returns its documentation on HTTP options request. HTTP GET request to the root of your API returns a list of all available endpoints with some documentation. Pretty handy. As I already mentioned, Drupal 8 has REST API doc module. Of course, work is in progress, but you already can try it. And we have one more criteria, versioning. In services, you might notice it that some of resources have this version API Dropbox. You can implement the same, but services versioning API is quite complicated, in my opinion. There is another way to use multiple endpoints for different API versions. RESTful has built-in resource versioning, so you just need to follow naming conventions and it will work. For other modules in the table, you need to invent your own versioning mechanisms, so we simply gave 5 stars if versioning is supported and 1 star if it's not. So it looks like we did it, finally. Congratulations to all of the modules. Of course, all this data will be available online.
Thanks, Kate. Excellent. We've just learned the theory of REST. We've compared several available solutions by different criteria: performance, documentations, popularity, and some others. We hope this information will save you a few hours when you decide to create a RESTful API in Drupal. As you can see, evolution creates new solutions. We believe that Drupal 8 with its built-in web services is definitely a result of evolution too. And we are confident that it will make a difference soon. In conclusion, we would like to encourage you as a community to join forces rather than creating own custom solutions or yet another RESTful module. So it's time now to test our demo app. Yes, we prepared one. Here is a link to our demo app. Drupal backend, Drupal 8 backend, and this demo app are hosted independently, and they are absolutely decoupled. While testing, please leave your feedback about our presentation with pictures you like. But seriously, it's just a demo app. We would appreciate your live feedback and live questions right now.
Thanks.
Okay, please.
Just a moment. Who was the first? Please use this because we have.
Yeah, to recur.
So I'll repeat the question. Why did you use Drupal to create this API?
Oh, interesting question. You know, maybe because of this is Drupal conference, or you know, but yeah, I think it's possible to use other framework solutions. I never stop and stay on the same solution, but Drupal is quite stable and provides good functionality out of the box. I think it's a good platform for API.
Yes, that's for sure, but...
Something wrong? One? Just be louder.
Yeah, that's for sure. Drupal is really stable and have a large community, but I think that some another frameworks, like for example Silex, simply might be maybe more comfortable to create REST APIs, for example.
So if you are using Drupal already for your website, for your content as a content management system, it will be great save of time if you can use Drupal to provide API from this content, for this content with Drupal. You don't need to create separate backend system in the middle, but if you are using, for example, another framework, why you need Drupal only for API, I don't know, maybe you don't need it. First use case is then you are a Drupal developer and you use Drupal for creating content, for management content, and the question is, can we be in trend, can we be modern and provide all these features without some big loss of time? Yes, we can. We have a lot of tools to provide API.
Yeah, and I add here, so Drupal is about content, as Kate said, and if we need content management functionality, definitely Drupal is the best solution I know.
That's for sure. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for the presentation. It's very nicely researched, I must say. I've got a question related to performance. So basically, when you showed the results there, it appeared that the RestWS module was the most performant ones, apart from the endpoint, which is a different story, I assume. So did you actually look why its performance is probably twice as good as any other module in Drupal?
Kate will answer.
This module, we can open slide with code base. Its code size is quite small. Let's see first this slide. The question was about this. And now let's check. Oh, where it is, This one. You can see that it is quite simple. It provides endpoints for entities based on entity API, and you don't have so much features as services and RESTful. It can be very good solution if you don't need all these features, and it shows better performance results. But in some cases, you just need to, well, you know, authentication plugins is RestWS is a problem to integrate. As I know, or you can't even somehow, if you have a lot of time, you can't do OAuth in RestWS because of its architecture. It is not scalable. But for some cases, it's a really good option.
Yeah, moreover, it was chosen for Drupal 8, I mean, as a base, right?
Yeah.
So it also confirms that it's quite robust and, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Welcome.
More questions? No? Great.
Okay, maybe questions about our demo app, maybe some
comments regarding our huge table?
Yeah, Kate, please do this slide.
Which one? The last one. Okay.
Yeah. This demo.
There is no quick way to do this.
Yeah, this one.
So thank you very much
Yeah,
for inviting, for joining us. We are really excited.
Yeah, honored to be here today. Thanks.
Thanks.